Hello, this is wmpyr here to answer a question. The comment that I got from James Rhodes, it says, with Jiu-Jitsu exploding all over the place, if taken to the ground, can or do you think you could pull out a knife? All right, so fair enough. So that kind of sounds like knife versus Jiu-Jitsu, or in my case, should I say like Eskrima versus Jiu-Jitsu, right? Um, but what I would like for you guys to think, okay, so let's think about this logically. So, logically speaking, the situation that we're talking about is you've been taken to the ground. So, in other words, you are in a grappling situation, right? You're ground fighting at the very least. So, in that case, I think it's very logical to assume and say that whoever is the better grappler, whoever's better at grappling, has the advantage. So whether you decide to use a knife or not, if you're in a grappling scenario, the person who's better at grappling has the advantage. So that's, I think, very, very reasonable and sensible to say. That makes total sense, right? Um, Another example that I could give you is, you hear about people saying, well, if I get taken to the ground, I'm going to use my knife on them. Or if I get taken to the ground, I'm going to eye gouge and bite them, right? I'm going to do stuff that's not allowed in grappling tournaments. And if you think about it, instead of thinking of it that way, we should be thinking about if you knew how to grapple, then using a knife would work even better for you. If you knew how to grapple, then the eye gouging and biting, you'll be in better positions to do that. So that's really a no-brainer. So I want to just get that out first, okay? So now the next thing that I need to talk about is I forgot who it was. It was a world famous martial arts instructor, and this person said that I think he was teaching a seminar, maybe, and one of the persons asked him about, what if you go up against a grappler? And the person did, I think, a double leg takedown and took down the instructor, got on top, got on the mount, and was ready to drop some punches. And right at that moment, the instructor who's on the bottom, who's being mounted, sinks their knife right into the guy's thigh. And I believe it was a training knife, so he didn't really stab it, but he put it right there. And that's where the grappler, the guy on top who was about to land some punches, who thought he was in perfect position, textbook, that this was going way too easy, all of a sudden was like, I didn't even see that. And you just, in real life, you would have sunk that knife right into my thigh, and that would have messed me up, perhaps even been fatal, and probably not just one. So that was an eye opener for that grappler. But and I think that's a famous story, all right? But let's think about it this way. The reason why the instructor was able to do that was because the grappler was incompetent. The grappler made a huge mistake. What was the mistake? The grappler thought only in terms of grappling. So the grappler fought like a sport fighter, 100% sport. You can be a sport fighter. I was training in sport jiu-jitsu, but I was constantly thinking about street application, street fight. So I'm not saying I'm a great jiu-jitsu guy or a great grappler. I'm not, but I'm just saying the mindset is what's important there. So if you are a grappler, you shouldn't be thinking purely in terms of just grappling. If you do, you're making it easy for the other guy. You're making a huge mistake, okay? But once again, that relies on the grappler making the mistake. So the instructor was able to sink that knife into the guy's thigh, no problem, because the guy made a mistake. You're relying on the guy's mistake. to me, that's not cool. To me, I don't want to rely on them making a mistake. I want to rely on me doing what I got to do. I want to rely on me strategizing, me doing the skill, me working on the technique. I want to rely on what I can control, not on things that I can't control. Okay, so I don't want to leave it to luck like that. Okay, so to me, that example, it's something to think about, but there's, you can't expect every grappler out there to only be thinking just purely 100% sport, because that's not true. There's plenty of grapplers out there that are street savvy, that have stabbed a person, that know how to street fight. So you got to expect that. Why expect the less? If it works out easy for you, great. But I'm really not interested about the easy situations, you know what I mean? So now moving on. Let me tell you, about 10 years ago, I was in San Antonio, Texas. I owned and operated a martial arts dojo, so I had my own school. And in that school, I had some really good grapplers come by to my class. And one day, I remember asking them, I said, hey, is it cool if we do a little bit of an experiment today? And they said, sure, they're real nice guys. So I said, hey, remember that scene in the movie Saving Private Ryan, where, the guy is like trying to drop the knife onto the guy, he's on top, they're on the ground, and he's going shh, shh, and he's slowly lowering that knife, and that's a disturbing scene, right? So I said, do you guys remember that? And they're like, oh yeah, oof, right? And I was like, I don't you want to prepare for that? So let's experiment about that. So let's try that. I got some rubber training knives, and they were the cold steel ones. So they're rubber, but they're kind of hard. They're not super flimsy. So we practiced from that scenario where one person is mounted and the other person, is trying to drop the knife and the other person's defending. So we did that. We also did they start off on the knees and they're grappling, and then the third person at any given moment would have the knife and would just throw it onto the mat. And then all of a sudden it's a scramble, man. Everyone's fighting for that knife. So that's another practice that we did. And another one that we did, a little bit more pertaining to this question, was one person was looking away, and while they were looking away, the other person got the knife and they put it somewhere, anywhere. They could put it in their sock, they could put it, in their pants, behind or on the side. They're hiding it somewhere, and then they would grapple, right? So the other person didn't know. They knew they had a knife, but they didn't know where. So they would start grappling, and then at any given point, anytime the guy wanted to, he could reach out and go for it, use the knife. But they're grappling, okay? So that was one of the ones that we did. And what happened was you start to read cues. So when the person starts going for it, you go, oh, I got to stop that. So that was something that took some practice, but it honestly didn't take a whole lot to start getting the hang of that. So you can read the body language of, oh, he's trying to go for something. So you try to stop it. So what that also teaches you is that when you are going to go for the knife, and the question is, do I think that I could, depending on the situation, depending on the opponent, depending on a lot of things, yeah, I absolutely feel like I have a decent chance of going for my knife. But there's some situations where that may not be possible. It just depends, So if there is an opportunity to get my knife, sure, I will. And I feel like there is a decent enough chance for me to go for it. But you want to be subtle about it, because like I said, we were able to read each other and go, oh, he's going for a weapon. He's going for something, a syringe, a firearm, a knife, whatever. He's reaching for something. We could figure that out, okay? The next thing is we got so good to the point where as you're grappling, you're doing a pat down. So you're feeling for it. You're going, where is it? Where is it? As you're grappling. So we're able to, so in the case, the other person, the person who doesn't have the weapon, was able to actually find it and take it away in some circumstances before the other guy even got to it, before the other guy even thought about going for it. we went and got the knife first from that person. So that kind of situation happened too. So then where you put the knife starts to become important. Do you want it super accessible? But that also means it's accessible to the opponent on the ground. So something to think about, okay? So anyway, that's it's just a bunch of ideas, and these come from my actual training experience. So I thought it would be cool to share. So anyway, thank you for listening, and take care, folks.